Anthony, I'm looking forward to this show because I think we're gonna have a great time because we're gonna be right on the rails on this one. What do you think about that?
I'm always on the rails. And are you saying you don't have a great time on every podcast?
Well, usually the ones that you're not on, I can't have a good time. It's impossible. But one thing we are going to do is we're going to do something fun and different right here. I would say we're going to be having a bright line of a show. Yeah, we're talking Brightline Trains, a project I'm excited about. I'm tired of all this airplane stuff, Anthony. I want to ride those rails, finally with a train better than New York, New Jersey transit systems.
A little bit better. A little bit better. Not much, but a little bit.
A little bit better. So let's talk about what's going on in the incredible state of Florida. The brand new trains that have been operating and coming to Orlando later this year, maybe by the end of the summer. Patrick Goddard, our friend of the show. And Patrick, you are president of Brightline Trains. How cool is that?
It is very cool.
You guys are really creating the renaissance of train travel here in the United States. God bless Amtrak, but they've got a whole other kind of scenario. You guys are making things happen, dedicated tracks. It's really exciting to see. Congratulations.
Thanks so much, Glenn. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we say. We're reinventing train travel in America. This is the first privately owned intercity passenger rail system in the United States since Henry Flagler did it about 125 years ago.
Also in Florida, and for those listeners, he's basically created Florida as we know it for tourism, built the trains and built the hotels by those trains. Patrick, continue, please.
That's right. That's right. I mean, he was a legend. By the way, if you have never read Last Train to Paradise by Les Danforth, it's a great read. It's compulsory reading here at Brightline. It's about the story of the pioneer, mud in your face, arrows in your back. It's been that kind of story for us for the last 10 years, trying to get to this point.
Yeah. You mean this wasn't easy? You mean it wasn't easy? So for people that don't know, explain what your company is, where the trains are, and what's your vision for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah. So Brightline is the first privately owned passenger rail system in the U.S. Really since Flagler did it. There isn't any other. It was founded by a guy called Wes Edens. Wes Edens is the co-founder of Fortress Investment Group. Fortress is the primary investor in Brightline. It started when they bought Florida East Coast Industries, which was actually Henry Flagler's legacy company back in 2007. And as part of the assets that were in that company, there was still the railroad that Flagler built, which went from Jacksonville, originally went all the way to Key West, but at that time it was Jacksonville to Miami. And Wes started to ask himself the question, why is there no intercity passenger rail in the United States? He looked at Europe, you look at Asia, they have very well-established intercity passenger rail systems. Why don't we have them here in the U.S.? So we started, being a curious guy. He started to get into whether they were profitable, right? That's important. And started to understand that really here in the United States, about 50 years ago, after the Second World War, 70 years ago, the Europeans and the Asians doubled down on their railroads and upgraded their railroads to intercity, to high speed. Here in the U.S., we doubled down on the highway and the personal motor vehicle, and we effectively gave away all of the rail lines all over this country. As a result, 70 years later, we have one of the best freight infrastructures in the world for freight rail. We have
as my kids know when they come home from college on train and get to hang out on that train until the freight rails go by, sometimes hours at a time.
And that's part of the issue is you can't get priority. So passengers do end up stuck behind freight trains, particularly on a lot of the lines that Amtrak operate. So, so this was really a phenomenon of looking around the country and understanding why there wasn't intercity passenger rail, understanding that there was an opportunity for the creation of intercity passenger rail. And then here we are in Florida, the third largest state in the United States, population of 20 million people, 130 million visitors annually. You got the three biggest ports in the country, in the world. You got 50 million coming into both Miami and Orlando airports. You got about 40 million cars driving between Central Florida and South Florida on an annual basis. It's the ideal market for an intercity passenger rail option. so that we can provide an alternative to driving your car. About 97% of people get between South and Central Florida by car.
Right.
The rest take a plane. Very inefficient, not very eco-friendly. So we started building this project in 2014. We delivered phase one, which was Miami to West Palm Beach in 2017. At the end of 2017, we started operating in 2018. It's actually our 4-year anniversary this month of operating in South Florida.
Congratulations.
And we started off servicing Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm. Last year, we added stations in Boca and Aventura. And we're about to complete what we call phase two, which is connecting West Palm all the way into the Orlando airport.
And that is very exciting over there for sure. That'll be opening soon enough as we're recording this show.
I remember when I was a kid and we'd be in Miami and we wanted to go to Orlando. And my mother's like, I don't want to drive 5 hours to go to Orlando. And be like, please, 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 please. And once in a while she would do it. But this would have been a really good option. How long would it take to go from there to Orlando?
Takes about 3 hours. It depends how many times we stop. So it could take as much as 3 hours, 25 minutes. But it's about 3 hours, 25, depending on the number of stops.
Right. And the best part is you just get to hang out on that train. You don't have to sit in traffic. And I can imagine taking a flight from Miami to Orlando. This is what I experience in the New York area. I drive everywhere from Long Island, where I live, from, all the way down DC, Philly, Boston, that whole area, because there's no point in going to the airport. You have made it impossible for people like me to even want to bother getting on the plane, because it's a lot easier just to take that bag, go right on a train, and then 3 hours later be where you want, instead of going through this, that, and the other thing, loading, unloading on the planes. Ugh.
And how was the ridership when you opened up the first line? Did it exceed expectations?
It did. So
Fabulous.
I'll give you for instance, the Acela, when it first opened up, and you know how densely populated that area is, and it really goes from downtown to downtown, in DC and New York.
Yeah, but just let me explain. Acela is the quote unquote high speed rail currently offered by Amtrak in the Northeast corridor, which is Boston through Philly into DC. Sorry, please continue.
So using that as an analog, they carried about 600,000 people their first year. We carried 1 million our first year. Our run rate right now is over 2 million and growing. Last March, we carried about 190,000 people, which was, again, like way above our expectations, particularly in a post-COVID environment where people thought we would do about 50% less than that. So we're very happy with the adoption in South Florida. It's a short trip in South Florida. You're going Miami to Fort Lauderdale, going, Miami to West Palm. It's a 67-mile, 3-stop railroad. So we did not have high expectations. We really just wanted to get something open so that we could get a little bit of proof of concept, get some learnings, get educated before we opened up the system that really was intended to take people from South Florida to Central Florida.
Right.
And that South Florida business actually broke even in March.
That's incredible. Because Patrick, because I would have thought like, oh, you only have that one little part open, you're going to get a percentage of people, but really the magic will happen once Orlando opens. So that's fabulous news. I think exactly it just proves there's a craving for this. Anthony, go on.
As a marketing guy, was it just overwhelming marketing, or was it just overwhelming demand?
I think a little bit of both, Anthony. So I think, we live in a very car-centric culture nationally, and Florida in particular, people like to drive.
Yeah.
So, at the beginning, it was literally prying people's white-knuckled hands off their steering wheels and dragging them into the train station.
Yeah.
And we did that through marketing and great offers and first ride free and all that kind of stuff. But then over time, what we found was there was a lot of resistance to that first experience, that first train ride, because people have to change their plans. They got to get out of their routine. They got to drive to the train station instead of getting on the highway.
Patrick, I'd also say most people have only taken commuter rails, which is a completely different and a very negative experience psychologically.
And in Florida, barely. There isn't. It's nothing. The infrastructure in Florida is nothing like the infrastructure you have in the Northeast, or in Boston, or So it took a lot to get people on to begin with. But what we found was once they traveled with us once, that was it. They were hooked. They were like, "I'm not driving anymore."
Yeah. And it's like when you go to Europe, everybody I know that goes to Europe is like, I can't wait to get on the train, right? And I remember when I was in Europe going from city to city, we never thought about getting in a car.
Right.
It's a psychological thing, right? Because I think people perceive that the car is easy and gives you independence, right? Because the friction involved in driving a car somewhere doesn't come at the front end when you take the keys out of your pocket and get into the car. the friction comes in the middle of the trip when you get stuck in traffic, or when you get to the end of your trip when you're trying to find and pay for parking.
Right.
With a train, the perceived friction is getting to the train station and getting from the train station to your final destination, which is why last year when we restarted after COVID, 2021, when we restarted after COVID, we introduced this thing called Brightline Plus, which allowed people to bundle their first and last mile into their train ticket. So we would pick you up at your house or your business or wherever, take you to the train station, and then at the other end, take you to where you were going.
Wow. That makes it completely seamless.
That's right.
And I love, for example, what Lyft is starting to do right now is like when your plane lands at certain airports, you can request a car, and when you get close to the area, it'll get it. I think that's going to be a great advantage to you when it gets more commonplace as well, to help remove some of that friction. But I think, Patrick, some of the problems that we've had is that most Americans in the post-World War II era were trained that you've got to get in your car. So nobody's even thinking about anything else originally. Not only that, but the government put up so many blockades in order to make train travel seemingly impossible, while putting all of our resources basically behind highways and pleasing the automobile companies. Not that there's anything wrong with cars, but at the same time, what Anthony was saying, in the 1980s, when we saw high-speed rail really taking over in Europe, in Japan, states like California just kind of got stuck in a quagmire and nobody could move it forward. What was the difference for you guys to actually make this happen and not get caught up in that what's happening still with California high-speed rail and other enterprises that have gone nowhere?
I think the key is you got to have you actually have to have control of the corridor itself, the travel corridor itself, and you want to take an existing disturbed corridor, so an existing highway or railroad. Part of the issue with some of these projects is that they need to take over a lot of other people's land through eminent domain or other. So it complicates the acquisition of the corridor, the travel corridor itself. This project was pretty much born on third base. We already owned the corridor. It already had rail on it. It was already running through the communities that we needed to. So I think that was a huge factor for us. And it's the same. We're working on a project connecting LA and Vegas, and it's the same thing. We're going to use the I-15 corridor, and we're going to dump tracks right in the middle of the median of that highway. So having the corridor is key, and that's sort of complicated throughout the country because they're mostly owned by freight railroads. So you got to find highways or other modes to be able to actually put the tracks in.
And as a person, and being in Glenn, LA, Vegas, we do that sometimes. Yeah. When is that available?
It's still in the horizon, right? It's kind of a different division of the company.
We're hoping to start construction on that, Anthony, by the end of this year.
Oh, so that next Friday. So it won't be available.
It will not be available next Friday, I'm afraid.
No, but I think that's going to be phenomenal. And again, that's another route that's going to be really strong. And again, for people that are not watching from the United States and stuff, a lot of weekend business in Las Vegas is created by that LA traveler. And a lot of those LA travelers have probably had enough with driving because the traffic is insane, particularly getting home on a Sunday. And furthermore, a lot of the strip resorts have started charging for parking. So for basically, I'm thinking for what you have to pay in parking, you're going to be able to take that train. But we're talking about Florida on this particular show.
Yeah. I think another big part of what contributed to our success so far has been the fact that we're private.
Yeah.
We don't need government funding. We're not beholden to government interests as it relates to where we put station locations, how we operate our schedule, what we charge for tickets. It's a private entity, private enterprise. So we have a lot of agency and independence over how we built it and how we operate it.
Yeah, excellent.
So that green screen behind you, Glenn, is that a green screen? What is that?
It is. No, this is, I guess it's a rendering because it's Mary Mary, a bar that's at the soon-to-be open Orlando train station, which is connected to the airport. What's that?
It's actually a photo.
That's actually a photo?
That's
All right,
actually
hold on.
a
I got to
photo.
put this on single shot for a second.
So that's what it looks like?
That is actually what it looks like. That is the bar area inside our station in Orlando.
Well, see, I was going to say the reason I brought it up is because I can get my head wrapped around that train station. Yeah. I mean, you go to the train station. I won't talk about my train experience, but I went kicking and screaming, and it just wasn't a good experience. And that looks like, a Delta Sky Lounge or even nicer.
Right.
we're super focused on the experience. I mean, that's like I'm a hotel guy. I was a hotel guy for 20 years before I started.
Patrick, how do we know each other? You said we met.
I'm not 100% sure. I think I was hunting for business. I ran a management company. We had about a half dozen hotels in Manhattan, and I think either I was trying to do something at the Algonquin at some point, or I was trying to get in there. Or I was trying to do something, and you were helpful.
What was the hotels you had?
We had the Hotel Mela by Times Square.
Yeah,
we had the Mave Hotel. We had the Edge Hotel. We had a hotel in Washington Heights whose name escapes me.
The Edge was that around the corner?
It was more towards Chelsea.
Okay, yeah. The Mela was on the same block, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you had a director of sales that I think you guys stole from me. That was from the Algonquin. And actually, I say stole. We would have gave you two for free.
Yeah,
but we probably met. You look familiar.
Yeah, for sure.
So
the reason why I ended up at Brightline was because they really wanted to look at this through the lens of the modern traveler and create an experience around transportation. This was not about creating the commodity of transportation. Anybody can do that, right? I mean, not anybody, but the simple sort of getting people from A to B is really just part of the equation. That's table stakes, right? People expect that as a minimum. But I think what today's modern traveler is looking for is an experience. So we look at the entire experience, whether it's the real life experience of getting to the station and getting on board the train and the services that we offer, or the digital experience, how you book it, how you make adjustments to your travel plans, and how you get in and out of the stations. Both of those we treat with equal importance. But we definitely did all of this through it's really the intersection of hospitality and transportation. We thought about the food and beverage experience. We thought about, we've got a nice scented lobby. We've got a beautiful premium lounge. We've got, free and good Wi-Fi. We've got, kids areas. So it really is loaded up with amenities so that when you arrive at the station, it's a great experience. I mean, that feels more like a hotel lobby than a train station. And then when you get on board the train, it's leather seats, it's outlets everywhere. You don't have to crawl on your knees to plug things in. You got great Wi-Fi for the entire trip. You've got onboard food and beverage service at your table. And it's not garbage. It's upscale food and beverage.
Right. I can't wait to go. I'll tell you, the lounges, I actually look forward to going to the lounge before I travel. I go, I get some work done, I eat, I don't really drink, but in the lounge, but it's like I look forward to it. So when I get there, I always get there, and Glenn knows I get there 2 hours at least in advance. And I don't mind it because it's such a great experience. And that looks like I want to take a train now.
Yeah. How did you get it to work out to go to the Orlando airport?
When we were conceiving of the project, the Orlando airport actually had the foresight about 20 years ago in their master plan to build a train station. They didn't know who was coming into it, but they built one. Right. So when we needed to connect to Orlando, we needed to get two things from the state, not money.
Right.
We leased the 528 corridor so we could connect the Florida East Coast Railroad into the airport. There's about a 40-mile stretch there where we had to build brand new tracks, and then and that brought us right into the airport. So at the airport, we have the train station, and then we also have our maintenance facility called Base Camp, located at the airport. So we have a lease with the airport for our station and maintenance facility, and then we got a lease with the state for the 528 highway connecting from the Florida East Coast Railroad into the airport.
And when will that be available?
This summer. We actually just put tickets on sale last week for travel dates starting September 1st. We're not ready to announce the actual launch date, but it will be sometime before that.
And it goes from where to where, just so everybody's clear?
Miami to Orlando, with stops in Aventura, Fort Lauderdale, Boca, and West Palm Beach.
Wow.
Right.
So northbound, southbound, there's a train every hour.
It's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, we got northbound, southbound trains every hour. We got 16 trains in each direction every day. Fares starting at $79 one way for adults, $39 for kids. We also have premium service, which is $149 each way. And then we got all kinds of 25% off for parties of four or more. So a family of four could get on for under $200. we've really tried to develop a number of different products for the very diverse market that we have here in Florida.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And of course, that's not going to be the end of it, particularly in Florida. The next phase is going to be Orlando to Tampa. I know the plans aren't finalized with the wheres and the goes and all of that, but it looks like you're gonna be able to put a station right in the heart of all of where the action is happening right now on International Drive, where the convention center is. The forthcoming Epic Universe is coming, and that's really becoming a major hub of Orlando business and leisure activity.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so the extension to Tampa obviously presents the significant opportunity to connect to Tampa,
Yep.
which is a very quickly growing metropolitan area. It's 2 million and growing, tons of traffic and between Orlando and Tampa,
Yep.
and the rest of the state for that matter. It's a very, very, very busy corridor on the the I-4 corridor there. So we've already designed a system to go out there. What we're trying to do is make 1 + 1 = 3. So the local community has a commuter rail system called Sunrail.
Oh, cool.
They want us to build this system so that they can leverage what we build to expand their commuter rail system to service the airport, to service the iDrive area, et cetera, the theme park area. So that's what we're working through right now. But we've got a system, largely designed, and we're working together to figure out, how that's going to get executed and funded.
Right.
But so stay tuned for updates on that. But that would be where we would be going next.
I could think about how fast of a train trip is that going to be with trains that are at 125 miles an hour, and you've achieved even faster speeds. I think it's only about a 90-minute drive from Orlando to Tampa. So that's
on a very good day. That's on a very good day.
Right. So just if it's a very good day, we're still talking less than half the time, probably, with the speed of those trains.
Yeah, I think our travel time is about 45 or 50 minutes or something like that.
I used to make that trip every Wednesday when I worked in Orlando, because we used to go to the Hard Rock, with my food and beverage director and chef. And on a good day, it's 90 minutes.
Not a fun drive. So we think that'll be a game changer, and you're connecting at that point. You're connecting somewhere in the region of 12 million of the 20 million people who live in the state.
Yeah. Wow. That doesn't. Anthony, you muted yourself.
No, I said, wow. So when you were in hotels and now you're in this side of the business, what's the big mind shift? Is there?
Oh, good question.
That is a great question. There was a big mind shift. Look, I think whenever you've been doing something similar for a really long time and you switch to doing something that's really, really different, your instinct is to try and figure out what you can apply from, the way your brain is already being mapped to what you're doing. And that didn't work. It didn't work. So for about 6 months, I was kind of walking around in a daze trying to figure out which way was up. It took me a while to adjust. Obviously, all of the hospitality stuff transferred very easily. But when you start to get into building a $6 billion infrastructure project, and just the level of expertise and complexity of doing that, and making sure that you have the right people around you to be able to provide you with good guidance and execute on that kind of a construction project, that was huge.
Right.
This is, even though we're private, it almost feels like we're quasi-public because we touch every community, through the state of Florida. So there is a lot
fulfilling the same purpose, right?
Yeah. Well, so I think, dealing with elected officials, dealing with the different communities and what their needs and asks and wants and issues might be with a train running through their community and addressing those. There's obviously a very big focus on safety in any transportation business. So that was an area that I had a lot to learn on. So I had a lot to learn in construction. I had a lot to learn in terms of government affairs, community affairs. I had a lot to learn in terms of, the safety piece. Those were the areas that I think I had a lot to learn on. And then, like, what I would say is, even though in the hotel business, I had a lot of exposure to launching hotels. We built and renovated and relaunched, probably 10 hotels a year in my past life. There's no blueprint for launching an intercity passenger rail system. in
There
Florida.
is literally no blueprint in the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had to build the blueprint, and we had to
Yep.
build the commercial capabilities, and just trying to, like when you're launching a hotel in the market, you go and you pull a star report and you go visit a few hotels, and you can pretty much pull your projections together, and you're going to be like, you're going to be within 10%, right? Here, try to size a travel market, right?
Right.
Try to size a travel market for an intercity passenger train. You've got to look at, you're not just looking at demographics and psychographics, you're looking at people actually driving on the highway. And then
Right.
you're trying to figure out how many of your target customers are making that drive. And there's no artifact that you can point to get that information from. So we've had to like triangulate all these different kinds of studies to figure out what is the size of the market, how many people can we capture, how many people do we need to capture to make this thing profitable. So I think commercial was hard. And then finally, I touched briefly on the digital experience a few moments ago. We had to build that digital experience from scratch. It didn't exist. Again,
Right. That's expensive on its own right. Yeah.
In my past life, you just pulled a booking engine off the shelf and you built a pretty website with photos and you were done. Here, we've had to build a digital experience, and that's probably been one of the hardest things, actually, that I've had to learn.
Yeah.
So what, I like to talk about people who flex, right? I always say people don't change, but they flex. So what is it about your personality, the traits that you possess, that allows you to flex? Because that's a pretty big flex. What do you have in your DNA or your trait? What makes you unique to being able to pull off such a seismic shift?
I think I'm entrepreneurial, Anthony. I've always been entrepreneurial. Even when I was in the hotel business, I was invested in other things and doing other things. And I think that forces you to find solutions to things by hook or by crook. So you get presented with we're all problem solvers, right? Everybody, particularly in the hotel business, you're a problem solver. That's what you're doing. You're solving problems. And you're developing a strategy, but as we all know, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. You're going to get punched in the face, and then you got to adjust, and you got to iterate, and you got to adjust, and you got to iterate. So I've had a lot of experience doing that in my hotel life, and from a sort of entrepreneurial perspective. So when I got here, I think the biggest thing I would sort of attribute the progress we've been able to make here to is every time I really had a beginner's mindset. I acknowledged that I didn't know shit about shit when it came to train travel.
That's important. Yeah.
And as I interfaced with people who had run trains for decades and guys who had built multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects, like you have to have a humility about what you know and what you don't know. So I think I have an inclination towards finding solutions to problems and taking ownership of things, right? So you have to have an ownership mentality. And then I think you also need to have humility to know what you don't know, acknowledge what you don't know, and have respect for the people who do know what they're talking about, and listen to them and learn.
Yep.
And, I think you just gave the blueprint to success. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they said, when you go into a project and you don't know what's going on, what do? I tell everybody I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Matter of fact, in my book, there's a chapter where I talk about John Paulson. He was an asset manager. He should have had my job, and he didn't. I had it. I had the job, and he worked for me. But he immediately knew, and I knew he knew that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I told him, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and you should have my job. As soon as you do that, you're not the joke in the room anymore. Now you can work on getting better and learning and solving problems together collectively, as opposed to everybody just pointing at you and say, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. If you raise your hand and say, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, people are like, oh, I can relate to that.
Yeah. And
It's
I think sitting down with people, taking the time to sit down with people and say, can you please explain this to me? And railroad people love to talk in jargon and acronyms.
Right. Yeah.
Like hotel people. Like hotel people.
Yeah. With so many interviews we do here, we're like, wait, explain that term.
Yeah, I guess it's every industry, but they love to. So I'm like, can you just break this down for me in English? Like, what are we talking about here?
Right.
Because it's complicated, the signal systems and how they interface with each other and all this other sort of stuff. So taking the time to sit down with the people who know what they're talking about, and also teaching them, because everybody in this, I'm sitting in our headquarters in Miami. There's 80 people here. We got about 500 employees. Everybody here has a job. A lot of them are very smart and they're experts in their own fields. But we're all new to this. So I think creating a culture where it's okay to ask a question, where it's safe to ask a question, like I have made it acceptable for everybody to not know what the answer is. And by the way, like nobody should be walking into any meeting assuming that they have the answer, because nobody knows what the hell they're doing. So I think promoting that culturally throughout the organization and making sure that everybody understands that, like, there is no shame in not knowing what the hell you're talking about. Ask questions, ask dumb questions, get clarity on things. Like, this is your life. It's not a movie about your life. So, like, be a player, ask the right questions, own what you own. Don't try and fake it, right? I mean, I think that's been the key for us here. And I think everybody here who works at Brightline has that mentality and understands that there is no playbook. There's no perfect solution here. There's going to be things that we're going to try and we're going to screw up and then we're going to iterate. So I think making that acceptable culturally has been important for us. And it's allowed us to make mistakes and get better. This place is a different company every 6 months. It's a different place every 6 months because that's the kind of evolution that we've had over the last 6 years.
So with that said, and they were probably looking for an entrepreneurial person with not really having the experience of that kind of construction and knowing rail systems, how the hell did you get the job?
Great question. I don't know. I'm a good sales guy. You should see my wife.
Yeah. Anyway,
but that's interesting because I think I don't want to just, if I can, Glenn, just 1 minute. I don't want to kind of just laugh that off because you had to do something, whether it be you had to be agile, you had to be smart, you had to be quick on your feet. It's not just about selling. It's about being able to put a comprehensive plan together and verbalize that plan and to explain people, I'm the guy. I may not be the most experienced guy, but if you pick anybody else, you're an idiot. So like I want the young people out there to know that sometimes it's just you tap dancing and juggling, but backing it up.
Well, let me be completely transparent here because I gave you a funny answer to your question. The real answer is I wasn't hired as the president. I was hired as the chief operating officer. And I was brought in by
it's still a big job, bro.
All right, fair enough. But they brought me in as a chief operating officer. They wanted a hospitality guy to be the chief operating officer. Mm-hmm. And I was hired by a guy who at the time was the president, very sophisticated guy. But he was really the development and startup guy. So even when he hired me, he's like, I'm hiring you as the chief operating officer, but you should know that at some point we're going to hire a chief executive officer who will probably be more like somebody out of central casting for a CEO for a company like this, right? Airline experience or cruise line experience or whatever. And I said, well, I'd like to do that. And he said, well, no, you don't really have that resume. So you're going to be the chief operating officer. We're going to go look for this person. I'm going to move on to my next thing. They did hire a CEO. He lasted 10 months. Mm-hmm. And 3 months before we launched our service here in South Florida, which was 4 years ago, or 4.5 years ago, I got a phone call that they were letting him go and that I'd been promoted to president. Wow. Congratulations. It's yours. You're opening in 3 months. So,
what a great opportunity, but also
it was a pat on the back and a slap in the face all at once.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. It was like a battlefield promotion, right? It was a bit of a battlefield promotion.
And that just talks to keeping your nose clean, keeping your nose to the grindstone, and just working your butt off. And stuff happens. And, it's really a lesson, especially in this generation, that you just got to work and shut up and you'll eventually get selected. And when you don't get selected, and I have a couple times where I didn't get selected, I was selected that soon after because somebody screwed up and I just supported that person and I did my job.
That is the truth, by the way. Like you're often put in a position where you don't get the spot and you think the wrong person has gotten the spot that you should have. In many cases, you just got to wait them out. Just got to wait them out, but you got to be prepared to do that. You know, you got to be prepared to put in the work and be the guy. And like, I think I tend to want to be a leader, right? Like I tend to want to be a leader. So I am going to gravitate towards leadership. So when I see problems, when I see things that are not being addressed properly, if I don't see anybody else stepping up to deal with that, I'm going to step up and deal with it. Even if it's not in my job description or in my domain, I'm going to step up and be like, hey, look, this doesn't smell right to me. Like, I don't like where we're headed with the new app, for example, right? It's not in my wheelhouse. It's not under my purview, but I made enough noise about it that eventually you start getting more responsibilities. You start to get more things to do. Like, the reward for hard work, unfortunately, sometimes is more work.
I say it all the time. Well, I'll tell you, you're a light in the industry, and more people should follow you. I know, Glenn, you wanted to wrap it up. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Patrick, we're trying very hard to keep these things as brisk as possible these days, but I feel like we've got to get you back. Patrick, let's have you back in the fall after Orlando opens, and we'll get a little update on what's going on, if that's all right.
Let's do it.
All right, make sure you give us a good pitch for people to take the train before we let you go.
Get on GoBrightline.com or download the app. It is going to be the best train experience you have ever had. We can't wait to welcome you on board.
All right, I can't wait to take you up on that challenge. Yeah, I've taken the train through the channel from London to Paris, so I'm excited to see what you guys have to offer. Patrick, do us a favor, hang out backstage. We'd love to give you an official goodbye after we wrap up. Thanks so much. Anthony, that was great. I love that. And I had so much fun with it. And if you guys enjoyed that, why not download the audio version of our podcast? Listen to it on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you get your shows, we are there. And if you're listening to us right now, why not give us a little bit of a watch? Find us, of course, all shows are at novacancynews.com, YouTube, and our respective pages on LinkedIn and Facebook. He's at Anthony Hotels. I'm at Traveling Glenn. Don't forget to show up. Don't do it for me. Show up for yourself. The 5 steps of getting out of your own way. Go to shop.anthonymelcury.com, shop.anthonymelcury.com. You'll get one signed by him. Mine's not signed. Let yours be. I got to track you down and get the actual signature, Anthony.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the plug.
Thank you guys for listening. See you next time in another episode.